We're back.
Hey, hello, hello.
It's a little bit looks a little bit like we're somewhere further south with this. It's not actually a cactus. It's called a euphorbium. The difference being that it's got little leaves on it, and cactus don't have leaves.
Right.
Because I thought it was a cactus.
Yeah.
I thought it was 8 inches tall.
Wow.
And it turned into that.
Holy.
And I hadn't seen it for several years.
Yeah.
And when the neighbor that had it brought it back for me, a few days later it started blooming, and I was like, well, what's up with that? Cactuses don't flower. So I had to call my old friend Dorothy, Yarrow's mother, and because she grows succulents it's part of her business, I guess.
Yeah.
She sells bamboo and all sorts of succulents. But anyway, so we got that. Anyway, it just
Yeah, this is amazing.
it looks a little bit like we're in Mexico or something.
No, totally. Look at these thumbs here. They're like a deep emerald green.
Well,
You got away with plants, for
a
sure.
lot of people come here, and I was very happy when I walked into this room because I checked with my phone compass, and this window is 100% south.
Right.
And it's so nice that even on a dull day,
Yeah.
it's bright in here.
Yeah. So,
Anyway,
as a result, faces are a little bit more in shade, but we got this nice, beautiful sunny backdrop and surrounded by plants. How appropriate to be chatting with Blaine, the herb man.
yes, hello again, everybody.
Yeah.
We're here to. I was never one to work with too many homeopathics or flower essences in my practice, but there were certainly things like Rescue Remedy and a few things. And then at one point, Terry really got into flower essences. I think some of his Asian clients were bugging him about doing a all Canadian, like a new Canadian version of Dr. Bach's flower essence remedies.
Yeah.
So I think that's how it all got started. But anyway, so there's a couple of key plants that changed my life forever with experience in what we call plant-spirit communication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit like, oh gosh, if somebody guides you into realizing you can actually see auras or something, once you've done it, once you experience this is actually happening, you're not insane.
Yeah.
I realized that plants had been trying to talk to me my whole life, since I was a little boy, actually, and I had to revisit a whole bunch of experiences.
Right.
But with lady slippers, which are just so beautiful, I wish I had one to show you, but of course, it's not something you would keep as a houseplant. But reportedly, they're quite rare worldwide, because one of the things that lady slipper root was used for, and note I said root, so to harvest the plant, you kill it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like picking berries. And it's a nervine that's very, very sedating, but not at all toxic. So it was one of the favorites for childbirth throughout Europe.
Right.
All right, because K country and the foothills of the Alps are all the same. So if we go to France or Germany, we could do the same herb box that we do locally.
Yeah.
There's just olive trees and walnuts and a few other things, growing around. Olives, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, around Lac La Ronge, where my brother and his good wife are retired, pink lady slippers grow. They're the biggest of the genus. They're virtually as big as a prom corsage.
Wow.
And some people think they're ugly
Right.
because they're just so weird looking, but I think they're beautiful and always have.
Yeah.
So I've been around them my whole life, and their property, which is, as soon as you're into the woods, everything's covered with sphagnum moss.
Right.
This is the same land where I've harvested some chaga, so that might even have something to do with the lady slipper. I don't know about just what's in, the whole mycelium of that property, but we find them a lot along the Churchill River, which I've spent a lot of quality time on my whole life, canoeing and kayaking and whatnot. And here in the local hills, heading up both the South and North Ghost Rivers, there's trails that I've been on where you have to be careful not to step on them.
Right.
Like I would literally see 200 in a day.
Holy.
So I've harvested and moved yellow ones
Yeah.
to move into people's property. A couple of my neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
my house that I just lost, Terry's place, for example,
Yeah.
and they've done very well. But the pinks don't. They're
Right.
feeding on. It's like a mycorrhizal thing, I think, where
Right.
they're feeding on something that could be 8 feet down on the ground or whatever. They don't seem to work out. But anyway, the pinks are big and huge and beautiful. I've adored them my whole life, and they were. Whenever I would get there, May long weekend into around middle of June, that's when they're in bloom.
Right.
And as soon as I get out of the vehicle, when I get to my brother's place, I run behind the cabin to see if they're blooming
Yeah.
or what. And on one occasion, there was a whole bunch of new ones. And I used to lay on the sphagnum and sort of meditate with them just to suck up their beauty.
Yeah.
And there's a calm to them. And
Do they have an aroma to them at all? Or?
not really.
Not-
No.
yeah, yeah.
No. I don't know orchids that do, actually. I don't
Right.
think many do, if any.
Just a beauty and
I mean,
a presence.
there's probably something there that draws for pollination. It's too subtle for our noses, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, you might find single ones growing like that. Just grab that little. There's a little orchid right there with no flowers. So a lady slipper in the woods might look very much like this, and have a single stalk with a flower about that high. But from the root, they will over time form a clump.
Okay.
And that's how you can, like I was at one of the health expos here in town years ago that a guy was selling lady slipper roots, yellow lady slipper roots. And I said, well, what's up with that? And he said, well, no, I started, if I had land, I would do this. He started a little plot
Yeah.
where he let them clump, took years to have his little miniature farm about 10 feet across.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he'd break up the clumps and sell the clumps for like $25 each.
Yeah.
Or the singles for $25 each. And I thought, well, if I ever have the opportunity, I would do that. But anyway, that's about what they look like. But then they'll form clumps. I've seen them up to, say, 18 inches wide with 15 flowers. And
Wow.
they're just, I think, strikingly beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll just put this down here. So my whole life, when I see them, I tend to hang with them a bit. The ones on my brother's property, I would lay on the ground beside, sort of meditate with. And on one occasion when I was there, my second wife, and she's the one all into energy work, taught me a lot about Reiki and all of these other subtle vibrational healing and things like that. And her birthday, I think, is on June 9th, and I was up there on my own. And I was heading to the beach, which is about a half-block walk. And I sort of, I said, good morning, there was a lady slipper there. And the lady slipper was trying to kind of go like there's a Blaine, hello, are you? No, and I just said good morning and walked by. And the second time I walked by them, or maybe on the way back, this lady slipper was sending out a message. It was like, Blaine, look, there's a 4-leaf clover right here, and that would be a really cute thing to put in Jennifer's birthday card. She'd like that. And I thought that can't really be happening. And I went back to the cabin, and the next morning when I came back out to go for another thing, like, hello, stupid, it's not going to last forever. There's a 4-leaf clover right here. And it took 4 or 5 times before I stopped and went,
Right.
oh, there's a 4-leaf clover. And I could just feel all these lady slippers going, what a thick head. We finally got them, though.
Yeah.
But I would enjoy them, their presence always on canoe trips. So on one occasion when I got there, there was a whole bunch of new ones just right behind the cabin, just right in their yard there. And so I laid with them, and before I laid down, I just looked around and said, wow, you have a lot of grandchildren this year. And this is once around Wild Rose, we were doing a lot with the flower essences, right? Terry,
Right.
we're doing classes now, and Terry had published the book. And I just kind of looked around and said, would it be okay to harvest to make a healing medicine with you have so many grandchildren now. Could I come back next time I'm here with what I need to make stuff from your grandchildren? And I got a resounding yes.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'm in. And that was that. So all you really need, today wouldn't necessarily be a good day because there's some clouds up there.
Right.
You just need a clear glass bowl, some spring water,
Okay.
and you could use other things like vodka, but traditionalists use brandy. Finished, we want a minimum of 25% to stabilize it, and you can use glycerin, apple cider vinegar even, but
Right.
those are only good for a month or two and probably best in the fridge.
Yeah.
Where if you've preserved them, let's say, with alcohol, they're good for years.
Yeah.
I would go like 10 years easily, if not forever.
Yeah.
So that's about all you need. And then, you can book a vacation and you can book just about anything you want these days online if you wish, but you can't book weather, right?
Yeah.
So you got to just have the right day. And the right day is when there's going to be a continuous stream of photons, which we're not really getting sitting here in the window, right? Because the glass blocks them, I think.
Yeah.
But photons are the little energetic molecules that come with sunlight and slap you in the face. And you need to know that you're going to have continuous photons. Once you start the process, you can't have any blocking light, not even your own shadow.
Right.
So you have to be careful that you've got like a stump you're going to put the bowl on or something. I mean, open ground would be fine as long as nobody's going to come along and drink from it. So we're going to take a glass bowl, just a clear glass bowl like you'd make a salad with, and pick. People apparently will use as many as 5 flowers,
Okay.
but I'm of the mentality that covering the whole bowl
Right.
is actually better. I'm still a thickhead that thinks
More is better.
More is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was lots to take, and a lot of the purists will say you really shouldn't even use the energy coming out of your fingers.
Oh, interesting.
Can in a way contaminate it. That
Right.
if you can, you can make a little, almost like a thumb thimble. Is that what they call it for sewing? Yeah, you
Right.
could make a little. Well, you could use tongs.
Yeah. Tongs,
wooden
tweezers,
tongs,
right.
or some people will wrap leaves around their fingers with a piece of
Right.
tape, whatever,
Yeah.
so that you're not contaminating it. But we want it to have it in a place where no possible way is a shadow going to come. I mean, maybe a bird will fly over. Maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of that until just now. But put it in a place where not even your own shadow will ever block it, and at no point is a cloud going to come.
Right.
So you need to know you've got a nice,
Clear day.
solid, clear day.
Yeah.
Ideally, you're going to pick the flowers in the morning, and then the bowl will have all afternoon in the sun. And I just happened to be there for the summer solstice,
Oh, wow.
which I just, whether that's true or not, I just thought it might put a little bit of extra,
Yeah. Little spin on it.
a little spin, spark, whatever.
Yeah.
And isn't that fortunate? So I found the right place on the lot, and got a bunch of flowers, got them in, typically we want spring water.
Yeah.
And I used to always go to, there's a spring just outside Cochrane, or Canmore, where I used to
yeah.
go and get my drinking water all the time. So,
Yeah.
so I brought a jug of that, and some French brandy, and the bowls, and then some amber bottles.
Right.
And you'll need something, depending on the flowers. Here, the flowers are pretty big, and you could actually just pick them out.
Right.
With tongs if you wanted, but usually we would take a funnel and just dump the whole mix, so that you're leaving all the little plant bits behind.
Yeah.
And then that's when we want to do some math first and make sure that you've got to check, because brandy isn't 100% alcohol, it's whatever, and you've got to
Yeah.
figure that out, and then how much minimum you can, half and half is good.
Right.
Like 50%, that isn't going to hurt.
Yeah.
So some references will even say 75%, but it's got to be at least 25,
Yeah.
right?
Preserve it.
So so we do that mix, and into the amber bottles they go. So that is called the mother,
Right.
all right? And then from the mother, you cut it once. Same sort of thing when we drop it down to, we want it to be definitely no less than 25% alcohol, and that's a stock bottle.
Right.
And then from the stock bottle, you can make, a lot of people will take a stock bottle and dilute that one more time
Right.
before they have what they actually work from. So they're going to dilute it yet again,
Oh, wow.
right? So it goes through one more cut.
Yeah.
And then there's something, and I'm forgetting this word, when you pour the actual bottles for your clients, and then you have to do this little ritual where you tap it, I think it's 10 times or whatever.
Yeah.
When I used to bottle about 100 bottles of this in an afternoon, like my wrists were sore already from all this banging the bottles. But anyway, what I got off of this plant, between just being so ferociously pink, almost fuchsia colored, was a sense of something we're really short of in the world, which was not only tranquility, and I'm getting tingles even saying this, but unconditional love. Peace, calm, love you, and just so I was so delighted to be able to bring this back. And when everything I owned was pretty much removed, I was so delighted to see that it was you that ended up with this.
Right.
And it's going to fall on, that's like your grandkids can still be working from that bottle.
Amazing.
Right? If you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So,
The other beautiful thing about it, this is Myron glass. So it's like that purple.
oh, is that the purple one? Oh, even better.
Even better, right?
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you. Yes, I know all about that Myron glass.
That's amazing.
So amber is really good, but this stuff, it looks, I don't know if we,
well.
no, it's not even going to work. I was going to hold it up, but it's a really, 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 it looks black.
Yeah.
It's when you get a really bright light through it, like I'm just picking it up from where I'm sitting. It's just really, 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 really dark purple. And it's just the best thing to preserve something in.
Yeah.
So,
And so that's the mother.
that's the mother, and I was cutting it to make, as you have now in the shop, cutting it to this size for retail. And immediately after the first time I bottled some of this, I had a weekend workshop at the house.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a group of women, we were on lunch break, and I came out, there was a group of women at the picnic table closest to the kitchen door. And I said, ladies, I just like to try something here. I didn't have a label on it. And I said, I just would like you to take a dropper full of this and tell me what you feel. Just give it a minute. It's not a test. Just have a squirt. Some people go under the tongue. I really don't care, but under the tongue, if you wish. That's called sublingual. So a dropper full, and just sit with it for a minute and tell me what you feel. And they slowly, one at a time, opened their eyes, kind of looking at each other and mouthing the words, love. And daringly, I said, anything more? And one of the women looked at me and said, unconditional love.
Wow.
And I just beamed.
Yeah.
Because that's what I had felt.
Right.
And again, that came after years of just laying with them. It's okay if you speak out loud unless somebody else is going to think you're crazy. And who cares?
Yeah.
what they, I love, there's an old line about what other people think about you is none of your business.
Yeah.
Right? So this whole thing of, do we imagine it? Is it really there? I think it's there.
Yeah.
And my first experience that I was saying, I had to retrace a whole bunch of things that happened with my life. Jennifer, I mentioned there were other plants. Another one was one of the last things I would make in my weekend herb harvesting thing, and the reason it was last was that I was very sensitive to the pollen.
Oh, right.
I had this thing going on for years where midsummer, or I'd make like tarragon vinegar,
Right.
and I would go from being crystal clear, bubbly,
Yeah.
everything just, and by the time I would stuff a dozen bottles or so, wine bottles full of, using a fondue fork,
Yeah.
full of tarragon
Oh,
in flour,
yeah.
I could fill half a cup with mucus.
Right.
So when I would go up picking enough Artemisia frigida, that's the wormwood sage, to fill a cooler,
Right.
so I'd have a whole box full of it. And if you're ever going to tie a lot of smudge, I'm kind of shifting gears here, but not for long. Something that works really well is that frigida grows on south-facing hills mostly, and the stalks are, so it's, you don't have to worry too much about harvesting because it is perennial, but the stalks are very brittle,
Yeah.
right? And it's because it's like a desert plant almost, and so you don't need tools really. You can just break them off with your thumbnail or whatever. But that would make it very hard to tie. Actually, yeah. Do I have one? Just see on the shelf there beside that big pipe.
Yeah, there we are.
This is like a mambo mama.
Yeah, look at that.
The way I used to tie up sage, and if I had some available, and this one did, where I would put a little bit of sweetgrass up the middle, kind of like the jelly in a Bismarck, and so trying to tie, I've seen so many people tie up smudge sticks like this, and they're sort of like, they remind me of the good old days, a really poorly rolled joint,
Right.
where it would burn up one side and fall
Yeah.
apart, and there'd be just a mess all over. And so I've seen people just kind of carelessly toss string around some of the plant. So what works really well is if you pick the herb and leave it bagged, not in a hot place in the shade somewhere, bagged. I would just leave it in a clear plastic bag in a big soft-sided cooler,
Right.
because I had to have enough for 20 people. And it seems so dry and brittle, but when you bag it overnight, it sweats.
Oh, yeah.
And it sweats enough that the stems are soft.
Right.
And then you soak your cotton string. You don't want to use anything plastic, right?
Right.
You soak your cotton string in water for maybe an hour if you've got that kind of time before you start tying. And this, if I light this right now and just put it in a mug or something outside at any angle, it'll burn just like a cigarette, perfectly even.
Yeah.
And what I like to do, as opposed to just swirling string around, is every second round actually keep knotting it.
Right.
So I could actually cut this
Yeah.
to give you half, and nothing would fall apart.
Right. Makes sense.
So this burns perfectly evenly, and if you know you're not going to need it for the rest of the day, you could douse it in water. Like I've got one that I use around here once in a while, because I can't do it in my room. We can't smoke anything here.
Right.
But there's a deck I can go out on, and then I've got to put it out. So traditionally we would use like old theater ashtrays were sand,
Right.
and you would
Yeah.
just crush it into the sand. But I would put it out with it. But this would burn perfectly evenly from tip to tip, without anything falling apart or whatever. So that's, anyway. So Jennifer had a place not far. She was living in Cochrane, and she found a ranch not far out of Cochrane, overlooking the Bow River below. You could hear some rapids down there, and raptors like hawks and occasionally an eagle would be screaming up there. It felt quite sacred.
Yeah.
And she'd gotten, like the landowners didn't care. They said, oh, yeah, go get whatever you want. So I went with her a couple of times for my harvest. And then once her daughter came with us, and then there was an occasion where neither of the girls were available, and I had to go myself. And she was getting ready for work, last steps, and I had to get going. So she was still in the bathroom upstairs. So okay, honey, I'll see you later. I'm gonna go. And she was yelling, "Don't forget to ask." And I said, well, you know what I do? I do that whole prayer thing at the end. She said, no, you got to ask. I said, I'm not going to ask every plant. I just, no, you got to ask every plant. So I get out to this hillside, and it's covered with sage. It's just, and I think, well, this is silly. I mean, there's such an open range harvest here, and cattle won't eat it because it's too bitter.
Right.
Tatanka. You've heard maybe that bison meat is actually the cleanest red meat, in terms of worms and things.
Yeah.
Because they eat this stuff. They're the only, and they laugh at all those other stupid four-legged creatures over there. They don't know what they're missing, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm standing there looking at this hillside and saying, I felt a little silly. Like, do any of you want to come with me back to the city and teach white people about spirit? And this little clump right in front of me said, oh, yeah, sure, Blaine. Yeah, I'd like to come. That'd be great. And as soon as that happened, and again, it wasn't out loud. I was hearing it.
Yeah.
And right away, the one just right here said, oh, yeah, well, I want to come too. And pretty soon, this whole hillside was, hey, well, let's go. It was like they all wanted to come and be part of the experience. So at the end of the day, with this big cooler full, and with each clump, you don't need to take them all. You take no more than a third or whatever, but it's perennial, they come back.
Yeah.
But when I left at the end of the day, I kind of looked back and I thought, they were thanking me for helping them fulfill their destiny.
Amazing.
Plants are all here for a reason.
Yeah.
And when I came back the next year, this was the big thing. Same spot within 100 feet. Parked the truck, coming around this trail and down there. And I could hear the plants saying, Blaine's back. It was just... So anyway, it started with wormwood sage and the pink lady slipper that opened this door.
Right.
Where at times, it's not something I do a lot of. I don't talk to all my houseplants every morning, sit here with a coffee or tea in the morning. But, if I miss something and one's dry, I'm sorry, did I miss you?
Yeah.
And a lot of people come in and seem to think that people just love, there's times I just look up and there's people I don't know in the door staring in my room.
Right.
Do I know you? Oh, no, we're just looking at your plants.
Yeah.
Oh, come in. And we end up talking about herbs and stuff for an hour sometimes,
Yeah.
So it's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so homeopathy is very similar. And Dr. Bach, B-A-C-H, that must be German or Swiss. So Sir Edward Bach, who was a homeopath, started working with flower essences as well. And it was on the premise that we are born with everything we need to live a pretty long, healthy life. But a lot gets in the way.
Yeah.
Bad diets, bad habits, and especially in our modern culture, stress.
Right.
All right? So when we're sick, we might go see... In the old days, as I've done it, there's a photo on the wall of where I lived alone in the woods for 4 months when I was 18 years old. But it's a lot of work being a hunter-gatherer. And that's why tribes formed.
Right.
And the bigger the tribe, the more people could specialize. So you would have a shaman, and usually the shaman would pick up on people's energy and then turn the real job over to women who were the gatherers.
Right.
Men hunted, women gathered, and that was important because there's so many plants, so many of things we've covered in other ventures together that are only around for a few days.
Right.
So it's like, hey, everybody, drop what you're doing because this is the time to get the bearberry. They're ready right now, and we
Yeah.
only have a few days, or they're gonna rot. So there would be specialists in a larger group, and that branched out to, as we formed bigger societies, now we have oncologists and dentists and just all of the different specialties, dietitians,
Yeah.
various things, because it's a lot to know.
Yeah.
Human beings are really complicated. So back to Bach, his premise was that we get out of balance and we get sick and we seek somebody's help on the physical plane, but that a lot of herbs, and especially flowers, give us vibrational energy to stimulate our own bodies back on track to fix ourselves.
Right.
So that's what emotional healing's all about.
Right.
And we have to be careful, even helping our own family and friends or ourselves. We might fault. I've heard herbalists fault medical doctors for this and say, no, we do it too, for failing to recognize that that isn't a condition, that's a symptom
Right.
of what's wrong. And that's where we get into people, especially men. We suffer from this whole boys don't cry,
Right.
and we end up with a lot of emotional baggage as men, and some guys never get ahead of this, that lead to physical health problems.
Right.
And that's where flower essence work comes in,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The idea
Yeah.
of like whatever's physical has like its roots in mental, emotional
Yeah,
bodies,
yeah.
and then it manifests out physically.
Right.
It's like, why did I get cancer?
And so, as opposed to being judgmental of anything to do with standard practice medicine, I'm sympathetic. I always have
Right.
been,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a tough job.
Yeah.
It's when I hear somebody say, well, I asked my doctor about this and she should know. I agree, wouldn't that be nice? But we are so complicated.
Right.
And that's why we have specialists.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, you go see somebody. Donna, that used to work for me, was having some issues, and went to see supposedly a specialist that said she needed more calcium. And when Donna asked her about citrate, carbonate, and this woman who was a specialist in such things literally said, oh, it doesn't matter. It's all
Right.
the same.
Right.
No, it isn't. And a specialist told her that.
Right.
Do you think
Yeah.
she ever went back to see that woman?
No, I don't know.
She's a specialist
Yeah.
in soft bones? That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I'm, if anything, sympathetic towards any sort of standard practice
Yeah.
people.
Right.
And it's the same with us. We've got to be careful that we catch that. And some of the women in my life have been specialists in working with what we call vibrational healing,
Right.
right? Bach flower remedies,
Mm-hmm.
homeopathy,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. It's the subtle stuff, especially with men,
Right.
because we're thick-headed.
Yeah, I'm like you. The more is better, right? you need the mega dose. But
Subtleties are.
to be able to open up to that, though, right? Is there's power in that.
But you're doing a lot with microdosing now, with some
Yeah.
of what you do, right? With mushrooms.
Yeah, for sure. And then I did a video recently about 3 ways to take a tincture. So the kind of the physical therapeutic dose, the macro dose, and then also taking tinctures like as a microdose as well. Hydrosols can be taken that way too, where it's like a couple of drops in your water bottle, just to kind of bring that essence through.
I have, can I back up where I am here? I think I need to turn just a little to not knock that plant over. I'll be right back. I'm only going this far. You can probably still hear me.
Yeah, exactly.
Something that's absolutely brilliant, and I am just so thrilled. Is that one a bit greener?
Yeah, that one looks good.
This is a native grass that out in Baldass Prairie, sometimes it won't be any more than 8 inches tall.
Right.
And it's hard to get braids that long.
Yeah.
I brought roots back from the mountains and introduced them to my front and backyard. They didn't last long in the backyard because the dogs ate it all.
Oh, wow.
They just felt the energy in it, or it tasted sweet or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was so funny on one of my long weekend outings with a group of women. One of them was saying, "Where do we find sweetgrass?" And I looked at a more experienced student that was there, and I remember looking at her and sort of tilting my head and looking at the other lady and saying, "Well, it's sort of everywhere, but nowhere."
Right.
And she kept bugging me all weekend. And so we were finally walking down this trail. We'd done a whole herb walk, and everybody was meandering back to the camp. And this woman came up pleading one more time, and I looked at the more experienced lady. We were walking up the two sides of a road. And I said, "Well, do you think it's time to give her some?" And okay. And I just looked down, and there was some growing right between us on the trail. And I said, "There you go."
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So with sweetgrass, it's, I've done with some of I still prefer saying First Nation. I know it's proper for me to only say Indigenous now. That's this whole
Right.
woke thing or whatever's happened. We got to rename. Anyway, they call themselves that. They prefer it when I call them First Nation or whatever. So anyway, I've done work for the Treaty 7 group. I've done some classes and seminars and things, and I've had people come up to if I have a little booth or just something to show. I learned early that I was nervous when I started being offered chances to teach First Nation organizations.
Yeah.
Because I'm a third generation Ukrainian Austrian, and what business do I have teaching Native people
Right.
herbalism, with their stuff?
Yeah.
And so I'd get real nervous. But it was actually Lady Slipper telling the story of Lady Slipper one night to a group. It was a one-night thing somewhere, probably the city of Calgary. And I thought, well, I've got to address this one fairly elderly Native woman. I just got to make sure I'm okay here. And I went to her right away at break and said, does that sound familiar? Did you ever hear that story before? And she said, well, I think maybe my grandmother when I was a little girl. And I thought, okay, I got free run here with this one.
Right.
I'm telling her stories that are her heritage. But we've had this couple generation gap.
Yeah.
Where they've lost a lot of their information.
For sure.
So, in is how. Wow, I stumbled into that, didn't I? So I'm forgetting which tribe it was. This story goes with. I'm going to say it doesn't really matter. Let's just say it was. I don't care, Navajo. I don't know what tribe. But anyway, the story was that the chief's daughter was out wandering around one afternoon and got a long way from home, and she was barefoot, and she managed to cut her feet.
Right.
And her feet were bleeding a little bit. And she was crying because she knew she wasn't going to get home before dark, and her mother would be worried, silly.
Yeah.
And when she woke up, there was a little slipper hanging for her. some little moccasins from a branch, and she put them on her feet to get home. And that's why when you look at the lady slipper flower, inside the throat, it's red. It's blood red.
Oh, right.
And that's why how the lady slipper got its name.
Right.
Was from the chief's daughter, wearing them as moccasins.
Right.
Yeah. That's a pretty condensed version of the story.
Yeah.
But anyway,
cool.
This stuff is magic, and I was just thrilled that you can cut in with that. Malcolm found a source and has been making hydrosol, and I was just astonished that this fellow had found a place where it's growing that long.
Yeah.
Because where I cut out a few minutes ago was I would often have First Nation people come up to me at a booth and say, like, where do you get these long braids, eh?
Right.
And I'd say, well, I grow them myself. And then another one would come up and say, where do you get these braids? And the one guy would kind of nudge the first guy and say, well, he grows his own, eh? As if I was talking about pot, right?
Yeah.
Or they were. But this is brilliant. Malcolm sells this hydrosol that you make yourself.
Yeah.
And was this from Manitoba?
Yeah, northern Manitoba. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just so surprised to see these in your shop. But this is, like, to me, this is, if you want, you could just let it rain.
Yeah.
And I could be in the worst possible mood after an argument or something, or being treated rudely. And I just can't help but smile.
Yeah.
My whole inner energy just went up about at least as high as the ceiling, right?
Sure.
So I savor that stuff.
Yeah.
So although this is from a green herb, it fits in totally with what we've been talking about, flower essences.
Yeah.
Because when you're at the top of your game, you're never going to be catching the cold that's going around at the office.
Right.
It's when you're stressed out of your mind or something else. When do you wake up with a cold sore?
Right.
When you had a fight with your spouse the day before. That's really close to the heart stuff, somebody that you love and normally get along with, but you have something goes wrong. That's when all of a sudden this virus decides it can come out and play. Yeah. Because you're in a weak state.
Well, and like you say, it's rooted in that kind of emotional mental state, the turmoil, the trouble, and then this is just kind of the outer physical manifestation of that.
So I was so thrilled going back to that first day I had gotten some of this stuff in a bottle, that group of women without any background story just all looked up, looking a little lighter, and smiled and said, love.
Haha.
Any more? Unconditional love. I think their minds shifted a little bit to where it had nothing to do with sex. It was the kind of, like, I would take a bullet for you, love.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so cool. They got the same message. Yeah. Okay, should we have a little shot of that?
I went under the tongue.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that you can drop in your water bottle, take under the tongue, as you had just done.
Yeah, when it's diluted. Yes, you're right. To put even a few drops in your water bottle at the start of a, let's say, gloomy day, or just something's a bit off, or like I said, you had something's wrong with somebody you do care for. It could have been as bad as an argument, or just
right.
It's Valentine's Day this week.
There we are. Yeah.
And maybe that could be a beautiful thing as a gift to somebody. And I'm not doing an ad here, by the way.
But yeah, just ideas, inspiration.
Yeah. And see, that's
you're
the my mouth's watering.
Yeah.
And I'm
I'll have
I'm-
what he's having. Eh?
I'm having a heart. There's no way I can keep a straight face now.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Oh, what a beautiful space to
I
be
just
in.
want to stand up and give you a big hug.
There we are.
It's pretty amazing. And pets,
Oh, right, of course.
you know, you can put. I don't care that there's alcohol in it. You're going to put a couple of drops in their water bowl.
Right. Yeah,
know?
that'll dilute right out.
You got could be a puppy that you went to the off leash park and an ill-mannered dog.
Right.
There was a circle when I lived right beside Rotary Park there. We had a group of about 20 friends that would always be in the park at about the same time of day. And every sort of person, everything from, we had our pet homeless person that lived in the park, all the way to people like, I think Alberta's top oncologist, you know, people like myself that knew plants, but there was everything from architects to just every walk of life.
Yeah.
And people that would, living in that neighborhood, would often, one of the couple would walk to the park with the dog in the morning with their spouse, kiss goodbye, and the one would walk downtown for work, and then they'd come back, and spousey would be waiting for them at the end of the day, so our same group would be there.
Yeah.
And we'd have that, like my dear friend Alex would be there. One day a woman ran over and said, "Hey, you guys are here all the time. Is this some sort of, do you have a club or something? We're new in the neighborhood." And my friend Alex, who was babysitting everybody, she just went, "No, these are the worst dogs in the world." You know, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we called ourselves the Rotary Park Disobedience Club.
Right.
But you get something like a puppy, and there's a mean dog that the rest of us are going to shame out of the neighborhood.
Right.
You know, literally, it's like, you don't belong, that dog does not belong in an off-leash park.
Right.
You're not welcome here.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you don't pick up your poop on the way out,
Yeah.
never come back here.
Yeah.
You'll get a fine. Or frankly, right now, if you don't, I'm going to go pick it up and put it on the hood of your car.
Right.
And I actually did that one day.
Yeah.
You know, just, this guy used to come to the park his car, let the dogs out, and read the paper,
Oh.
and eventually call them and drive away.
Right.
No, you just don't do that here.
Yeah.
But anyway, a puppy got nipped.
Right.
So there's one that Sir Edward Bach's famous mix of 5 plants, he called Rescue Remedy.
That's right. Yeah.
And Terry did a similar version called Rescue ER, I think is what the Wild Rose version was called. But we would say, and I agree, it's almost like the first thing you need at the top of your first aid kit, and I've used it for rescuing plants, is a couple drops. Somebody might even be losing consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
You just they have lost consciousness. You don't want to shake them. They might have a spinal injury. A couple of drops on their lips. I was coming home from, well, I'm way off this topic, but we're still talking about flower essences. I was coming home from work one day when I lived in a different place in the city. And this is when 11th Avenue downtown turns from 3 lanes to 5 lanes.
Right.
So there's no parking anymore.
Yeah.
And I think I was just writing a couple notes I had to do for a sales report. And a little flash of light made me look up. And an older car with about 9 teenagers in it was zooming up the inside lane just as I was looking up, and I didn't have time to react. This guy walking home from work, he looked like a painter or drywaller. He had his lunch bucket and, you know, fairly mucked up clothing.
Yeah.
And he was just walking by. I had an old Jimmy back then with a bit of a lift kit for off-roading. And I just looked up in time, for this car to clip him and his head bounce off the windshield and him tumbleweed up onto the curb and ironically came to rest against a tree.
Right.
And I put my truck in low gear, put it up on the curb, grabbed my first aid kit, ran over, was waving because there was screeching, and I was waving to a lady in the store. Yeah, so she's called 911. And he was out. And I thought, oh, better if we keep him conscious. And I didn't want to shake him because he probably had a spinal injury. And I put a couple drops of rescue remedy in his lips.
Right.
And I was right in his face.
Yeah.
Oh, what did I do before? Took some myself.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
To be dead calm.
Yeah.
So I was right in his face and said, "Hi, I'm Blaine. What's your name?" "Oh, hi, Doug. Do you feel a little off, Doug?" "Yeah, you just got clipped by a car. No, I'm just going to sit here with you. And I'm just kind of curious, Doug, about, I wonder if you could you wiggle your toes for me?" And he looked at me. I said, "Don't make any sudden moves. I just want to see if you can wiggle your toes." "Oh, that's great, Doug. Can you move your feet a little bit?" And he did, and I just relaxed a little bit
Yeah.
further and said, "That's great, Doug. I was worried you might have a spinal injury, but I think you're fine. And you got a bit of a bonk on your forehead, and there's a bit of blood running down. You might taste some blood in a few moments. It's okay. It's going to be fine. I don't think it'll even need stitches, maybe some butterfly bandages. But you hear that siren in the background, Doug? Yeah, that's for you. And I'm just going to sit here with you, and just if you need a witness for anything, if this is a big deal, something legal happens and you need a witness, I'm a sales rep, and I'm just going to put a business card for the company I work with. If you need a card, I just put a card in his shirt pocket and stayed there. And I just made sure nobody else was coming in, because you get stupid people that come in. Is he okay? Is he okay? You know, like,
Yeah.
So it's an important thing that I like to stress with people when we get into, as I've done we did a little first aid class at the store a few weeks back, that before you enter a crisis, that old thing you see in, whether it's on TV or in real life, where it's usually a woman, that only women get hysterical, by the way, where somebody, like the husband's, Margie, just take a deep breath, would you, honey? That is completely real.
Right.
Because the only stop button, the only off button that you have is a fully extended diaphragm. When it goes taut,
Yeah.
and then a slow release. You hunt, and you've probably learned this, that you are the most still
Right.
when you're exhaling.
Yeah.
You don't hold your breath and squeeze the trigger.
Yeah.
You take a deep breath, and
Right.
that's
Yeah.
when you're the most calm.
Yeah. Power of the breath. Yeah. Cool.
Well,
there we
anyway.
have it. Yeah, we covered some nice ground today. Chat about flower essences, lady slipper, sweetgrass made its way in there, rescue remedy. Yeah. Okay.
That was a good.
All
Yeah,
right.
It wasn't what I didn't know what we were going to do today.
That's right. It's always a fun, see where it goes. And I love the backdrop, the sun streaming in, and yeah, it was great. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in.
And this is where I live now.
Yeah, there we are.
I'm in a care home just sort of behind Gus's Pizza, just right by the Foothills Hospital.
Yeah.
And food isn't bad. I miss my own cooking. I miss that this time of year, my salads were famous for, like, there'd be absolutely nothing like lettuce in a salad. It'd be all wild greens, that some of what we've covered in other episodes.
Yeah.
And I'd moved enough wild plants, as Malcolm has done, into my yard that I could go out anytime and make a big bowl of salad with things like the stem leaves. They're called cullen leaves off daisies, fireweed leaves, depending on how late in the season they are. They get a little bitter after a while. Growing in the shade up the side of the house. The Western Canada violet greens, which are pretty good.
Yeah.
Also chickweed, a little bit like sprouts to put in
Right.
sandwiches and salads.
Great.
And then things I would buy to grow, like chocolate mint and lemon thyme and any lilies.
Yeah.
Begonia is my favorite because they're
Oh,
like
yeah.
a bright lemon flavor. And you don't even really need to dress a salad like
Right,
that. There's so
comes
many
salads.
flavors, just drizzle
Yeah.
it with a little bit of good oil.
Yeah.
And, so I miss things like that. But I was spoiled,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I'd spoiled myself.
Right.
Right? But anyway,
Yeah. Well, you
things
keeping the greenery growing and keeping it alive. You got a nice.
yeah, and even on the rare occasions when I don't do anything to the air in the room regards essential oils, but I just, to keep safe, like having come here during the worst of the plague, I don't want to go to the dining room where there's 100 people coughing.
Right.
The man right next to me, dressed as I am, he's coughing so hard in every meal that I can feel his spit hitting my leg
Right.
and my arm. And if I'm bending over to have some, I can feel it hitting my face. So, yeah, before I go to the dining room or any other shopping, I take a few drops of usually Thieves
Yeah.
and just breathe it deep
Yeah.
through the nose and through the mouth for about a minute. Just take that moment just to coat my airways a little bit. And then if somebody sneezes in my face, I don't care,
You're all good.
rather than getting upset.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. Yeah.
And so it took me a while to get used to leaving my beautiful home and my own cooking. I miss the barbecue for sure.
Yeah.
I miss my gym.
Right.
I miss my steam room. I miss having a dog. But a lot of things have come to me. It's been 4 years now.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
long time since my
Yeah.
life got clipped.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to get to a new sense of calm and
Right.
that it's all right.
Yeah.
Right.
Main thing is you're still
And-
alive.
And a lot, again, I continue to thank you for keeping me working, doing things like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's a plaque on the wall there that says, I'm a Herbal Elder of Canada.
Haha.
Wow. And you bring that into things with quite some esteem. Some of what Terry used to call herbal sprouts.
Right.
The youngsters growing up need some guidance and
Yeah.
hand holding, and that's what the live things that happen
Yeah.
with summer.
Yeah. Well, we got our blending class coming up, working with essential oils, and because we were going to run that earlier, but we're going to shift that to a future date. So should have that date sorted out pretty soon. Folks can join you for that, and then once that warmer weather comes back, we'll be getting outside again and talking more plants. So, okay. Well, thanks for bringing us in, inviting us into your room, and sharing.
I had the other day. I had just come back from your place actually,
Yeah.
and as I opened the door, and I thought it was just somebody off leashing their dog, running up until it got near the top of the hill.
Yeah.
And as soon as it turned its head, that's a coyote.
Oh, nice.
And it had. I didn't see what it had, but it had something big enough.
Huh.
I didn't see it flopping. It could have been a bunny.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's bunnies around the hill too. But it stayed right there for a long time, eating whatever it had, and finally it just kept looking
Yeah.
both ways up the lane, and then eating again. And the other day, I was just sitting here thinking, I'd really like to see that coyote again.
Haha.
And in less than a minute,
Oh,
it just trotted by.
right. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a weird state for me lately. I've been having a lot of. Do you know anything about angel numbers? Like
A little bit.
333
Right.
means usually an association with specifically Jesus,
Oh, okay.
ascended masters for sure.
Right.
And 222
Hmm.
is ascended masters as well. 1111 is watch your thoughts.
Right.
All of those things. And I just turned my head and I got another 333 on the clock.
Yeah.
It's been happening a lot.
Hmm.
You know, I had a watch that hasn't worked for 20 years. I took it in for repair. It had to go for Vancouver for repair. $415. But, you know, it was on my wrist for most of my life. And I even said to the guy, you know, we both know I could buy a decent new watch for that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's, you know, it was my grade 12 gift, you know, from my
Right.
parents.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just woke up one day and was saying, I wonder if that watch is going to come back anytime soon. And about 2 hours later, I got the call. I said, your watch is here.
Ah.
And I smiled and actually said, I know.
Right.
And the woman said, excuse me?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it's okay. It's just, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll be in within a few days.
Yeah.
Just that kind of
Oh, neat.
radar stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like even just, I was thinking I needed to call you today.
Right.
See if anything was up.
Sent you a message.
And you texted me just
Yeah.
a couple of minutes later.
Yeah. No, I had the same thing today. I was thinking about black currant syrup, and then literally as I was thinking that, checked my phone like, you know, a minute later, and Angela had texted me something about black currant syrup. So, yeah, I had that same experience today.
Well, it's the wrong time of year to make it.
Yeah, no, we've already got it. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
But you can, you know, where that started for me was that it's one of the many things my mother used to make just as jams and jellies when I was a kid.
Right.
And they were retired at a small lake north of Prince Albert. And I had been hired by this Parks and Rec in the neighborhood to do a weekend workshop there. And the building that I was going to be teaching at was a walk through the woods in the morning. And I showed up with this really dry, painful cough. I was worried about how I was going to get through the day
Yeah.
with this throat. And Mom just said, oh, well, here, let's fix that up. And she just went and grabbed a jar of her black currant jelly, put a big heaping tablespoon in a Go cup and stirred it up with hot water, and gave me that. And by the time I got to the building, my throat was fine,
Oh, wow.
you know, and that's where that all started,
Yeah, yeah.
was
yeah.
just with some homemade jelly.
Right, cool. Yeah, because you made it for a number of years, I think, in classes.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that type of
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one that we used to go and pick in Rotary Park. There's a couple of bushes there, and we would just go over that way. And
Yeah.
Alex, again, the neighbor I mentioned with the dog sitting, she had a big bush in front of her house as well, and
Mm-hmm.
she would leave them for us to raid. But it got to the point where I would have to pick up more at the farmer's market,
Right. Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah, it's something I grow in the yard, and yeah, it's such a delicious berry, and it's got its ties to the old world. You know, people really used to treasure that fruit. Maybe not so much these days, but
well, the whole currant family. There's now around currants. We get on these segues. Are we still running?
we're currently on currants.
You and your one-liners.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. That's ribes.
Yeah, ribes.
Ribes. We've got black currant and red currant and gooseberries.
Yeah.
And in nature, a lot of things like we think about cactus would be the extreme example, have saved many lives because they hold so much water
Right.
that you can survive in the desert eating cactus. And what you have to do is carefully cut some and then roll them around in. I had an old Cree fella taught me this for the. It doesn't matter. It was blackberries. So blackberries black currants and red currants always have protection in some way.
Right.
There could be prickles on the stem,
Yeah.
or little. They're not as bad as like rose bushes or anything,
Right.
but little hairy things that are
Yeah.
annoying on the berries.
Yeah.
And he taught me to just take some coals from the fire and the lid off my wok and pretend I was panning gold.
Right. Okay.
And the coals would kind of sizzle all the little hairs off, and then they didn't bother me eating them in my yogurt in the morning.
Right. Cool.
You know, so, but they all have the red currant crushed. There's a term, if it hasn't come up lately, the word rob
Right.
means to just crush a herb into just whatever you want to call that, just
Yeah.
crushed herb. An old name for that was a rob, just
A rob.
R-O-B.
Yeah.
And red currant rob would be something native here that would be the next best thing to aloe vera
Right.
to put on a severe burn,
Oh.
like a sunburn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then gooseberries, of course, as long as they're remotely ripe, are good. And again, they're very astringent.
Right.
So if you had a rash, not as good as plantain leaves, but any of the ribes crushed up would be good on a sting
Yeah.
or bite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was all another whole show.
Cool.
So I better shut up now.
All right. Bye for now.